Computer. Okay, so we are here for Ansible, specifically Introduction to Ansible. All right, let me go ahead and share my screen real quick. Okay, and hopefully my microphone is working well. Let me make sure I'm sharing the right screen. All right. Okay, perfect. Can you guys see my screen? You can put in the chat or thumbs up or whatever. You guys can see my screen. Okay, cool. All right, so just to just a brief reminder, um doesn't matter if you were here earlier, because if you as you remember, some of you guys were here when I was talking about Linux. But just a quick reminder, once again, we are studying um the Red Hat way, right? And again, just a quick reminder again, Red Hat will be the company that most company would use when it comes to servers, as far as Linux, anything Linux related. Okay, and I say this because when you look up Ansible, you will most likely see not just the word Ansible, you will see Red Hat Ansible, because just like the Linux flavor called RHEL, if you guys remember RHEL, uh, this is a product of Red Hat. And if you dig even deeper, you would find out that Red Hat is a company that was bought by IBM, and obviously, and I don't have to tell you what IBM is. So we're gonna dive into why do we even need to know Ansible? Because I don't know about you guys, but when I'm learning about something, if I don't know why I'm even learning about the thing, it's not like it doesn't come in naturally, because it's like, okay, I don't even know why I'm studying this. The reason why you need to know about Ansible, and the reason why, again, Ansible and Linux will get you to whatever you want, meaning having Ansible skills and Linux skills, which are usually paired together, but not necessarily. I mean, actually, kind of, because if you can write an Ansible playbook, which we'll talk about, if you can connect Ansible to servers, which I'll explain what that even means, it means you know Linux to a certain degree, because you are doing, networking stuff, you're running some Linux commands, and and you have an understanding on how configuration files work, because when it comes to Ansible, configuration is everything. Okay. Well, it's not everything, but you're not doing it. You're not gonna even run any work unless your configuration is done the right way. And I say all this, but you also need to understand that Ansible, even though it's made by Red Hat, which is the company, like I keep saying, that has the RHEL Linux flavor, it's not a Linux thing. Okay. And which is why Ansible is so powerful. You can use Ansible to work with pretty much every machine that allows some sort of remote access or control. For example, for those who work with network machines, I'm seeing a comment here. Okay, that was a thumbs up. Network machines, and by network machines, because again, I'm trying to be very careful here, because maybe some of you guys don't have certain like background. When I say network machine, what am I talking about? So if you have an apartment, a house, a basement, whatever, you probably use the internet, right? When you connect your phone to someone's Wi-Fi or your Wi-Fi, whatever. So you have something called a router, right? And inside the modern type of router, there's some kind of switch, or the router can also do switching stuff. Anyway, we're not going to get into networking today, but it's just to say that Ansible can manipulate, or work with not just Linux machines. It can work with networking machines like routers, switches, and again, we'll get into networking stuff a little later. That's why I was saying earlier for those who were in the Linux thing that when it comes to Ansible, this is not for those who are new to Linux. So I'm gonna talk to you guys as if you know Linux, all right? So there's a lot of things I'm not gonna explain because I'm assuming that you know, if not, you won't necessarily be here. So you can work with those to the point where if you guys know Juniper, anyone that's into networking knows Cisco, Juniper, those are two very big companies that provide networking machines and networking services and stuff. They have their own Ansible, what we call Ansible collection, and I'll tell you what Ansible collection is. Maybe today, maybe not, but that's a little advanced. Meaning these companies literally are prepared to do Ansible work to the point where they have their own Ansible, if I can say, commands, right? So, and that's really important to know because this also works with Windows. Okay. You can also run or use Ansible with Windows. So again, I want to make sure that people understand that even though I keep hammering the fact that, oh, if you don't know Linux, you won't know Ansible and stuff like that, which is kind of true, which is one of the reasons why if you go to a Red Hat website, if you don't believe me, go to the Red Hat website. You will see yourself when Red Hat themselves gave you a like a path in terms of getting their certifications. You will see the prerequisite or the thing that they almost require. Actually, not almost, they do require you to get the Red Hat System Administrator, Linux System Administrator certification before they can give you the Ansible certification, which is called, they don't call it Ansible certification, they call it Red Hat Certified Engineer. Okay. Red Hat Certified. Oops. What am I typing? Okay. All right. So yes, Ansible does have its own certification, just like any other tool besides Docker, unfortunately. Oh, I think Docker actually used to have his, but it stopped or something. Anyway, so yeah, it's called Red Hat Certified Engineer. Okay. So if you go, it won't say Ansible. All right. Well, this person put Ansible here, but we all know it's Ansible. So when we talking Ansible, we're talking automation. All right. So even Red Hat themselves, obviously the term Ansible exists, right? But you will mostly hear the term Red Hat automation. So when you hear Red Hat automation, it's Ansible. Why we can dive into why or why not, it's not really important. Okay. So once again, there is the actual Ansible certification called Red Hat Certified Engineer. Okay. And like I said, and I'm trying to explain why I keep saying that you need Linux before you get to Ansible, even though it works with Windows and all that stuff, is because when you go on the Red Hat website themselves, you can go and take this test, right? You won't get the certification, and I know this because I tried, and I was told that too. I think to be here because oh, no problem, Doris. You can stand by if you just want to know what Ansible is. But yeah, again, if it's a little confusing because you don't have the Linux background, it's up to you. But honestly, it's the introduction, so you're just gonna learn what Ansible is. That'll kind of give you an introduction to it. But it's up to you, really. Okay, so let me get back to it. So, like I was saying, if you go on their website, they themselves would tell you um, that you can, if you do this, you won't get the certification. You have to pass the Red Hat System Linux Administration Administrator certification before they give this to you. So this is to show you how important it is to have a good foundation when it comes to Linux before you can be doing any Ansible stuff. All right. And even when you get to using Windows servers, which we will not, I don't want to hear the word Windows, But just for explanation's sake, when you get to use Windows servers and automation servers like Juniper and stuff like that, Cisco and stuff like that, you will still need Linux, I guess, expertise. Um, well, I mean, it depends on how you do it. Because if you use the what we call the Ansible platform, you're not really doing any Linux. You're not really doing any Linux stuff, to be honest, because it's a whole complete different setup. Um, but again, getting familiar with Linux will make you more comfortable with terminals, okay? And terminals, you'll see that when you're trying to access a some sort of server and even these Juniper or whatever, okay? So once again, Ansible is the product of Red Hat, and if you want to, which I strongly recommend, get the certification of Ansible, you need to first get the certification of Linux. Uh, Unfortunately, only Red Hat, as far as I know, only Red Hat provide the certification for Ansible because it is a Red Hat product. Okay. All right. Now, hopefully that explains why you need Ansible. But and let me add this as far as why you need it in terms of work. Well, I think I kind of did, right? If you go to work, they have Windows machines. They have, well, in our case, forget about Windows. They have a bunch of Red Hat Linux machines, and it doesn't have to be Red Hat. It can be Ubuntu, Linux Ubuntu flavors. It can be whatever. Okay. You will need Ansible when it comes to automation, and I'll tell you more technically why. Let me see. How do I? Uh, uh, uh. I'm so used to Microsoft Teams. I'm trying to do something here. I'm trying to get okay, I found it. I think so. No, that's not it. Where is that thing? Looking for the whiteboard. What is that whiteboard? Let me stop sharing and start because I usually see that whiteboard. Okay, perfect. I got that whiteboard here. Mm, Let me use the classic, man. I'm an old school type of guy. All right, so let me know if you can see the board. And I'm gonna make this board as big as possible.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I actually bought this thing specifically for like teaching and stuff. I have this it's like a note digital notepad where you can like draw. I have an actual pen, but I've been having issues setting that up, so I'm gonna be using the mouse, the cursor. So bear with me if it's not looking too pretty, but as long as you get the point, that's all that matter. Okay, just like my got the pencil here. Okay, how do I make the font bigger? Mm, I wish Microsoft Teams wasn't that expensive. Okay. Anyway, as long as it works, I feel like it's way too small. Okay, perfect. Actually, I found it. Nice. Okay, perfect. This will do the job. All right, so let's say you're in a company, right? And in a normal company, at least a company that makes some sort of money, you will have multiple servers, right? But for the sake of explanations, let's say you have 10 servers, all right? 10 servers. So this is one server, two, three, four. Let me even put it here. Do a, uh, well, let's just go with this. We have nine servers. Let's stick with nine. Doesn't matter. So you have nine servers. And make sure that's exactly one, two, three, four, five. Okay, so you have nine servers, and they are all Linux. And again, it doesn't matter if some of them are even Windows. Again, doesn't matter. But in our sake, let's just say they're all Linux servers. All right. Some of these servers might be, let's say, these two here are database servers. All right, meaning these two here serve to work with data. All right. Matter of fact, let's make three. Oh my God. What the hell? Let's make three. I need to fix that pencil. Let's make three database servers. And here we have web servers. All right. Web servers, two of them. Here we have a server that's running Jenkins. All right. And don't worry if you don't know what Jenkins means. Just know that is this is a server specifically for an application called Jenkins. All right. And then these other three, let's say this server is just an application server, right? Let's call it JBoss. All right. So this is a JBoss server. It's actually a real application. And let's say these two servers are, doesn't matter. Let's even say that they're just unused servers, server for testing. All right. This is testing servers. All right. TS. All right. Testing servers. Okay. All right. So here you have multiple servers. All right. And all of them, they have different task, different purpose. Okay. So now the thing is, obviously, if they serve different purposes, it will mean the content is somewhat different. The maintenance is somewhat different in terms of everything. It could be that okay, database servers, we might need a certain amount of space. Again, maybe not maybe, and the database servers will belong to or will be managed and maintained by a team called the database team, right? A web server, JBoss would belong to the application team, whatever, whatever. Okay, so if you use Ansible from a system engineering perspective, there are certain things, not just because you use Ansible, but when you work with servers, there's certain things you need to do, right? You need to do patching. Let's say you need to create a specific user on just the database server. So one, two, three, right? Just these three. You need to create a specific user called, I don't know, Tom, all right? So whatever you need to do. Now, the problem is here we're working with one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine. Now, here we're working with nine servers. But in a normal company, you can have 100, 200, you can have 3,000 um, machines, even maybe even more. Okay. Well, if it's past that, today we'll probably be using containers, but that's another talk for another day. Uh, anyway, so how do you apply a command on 100 servers? Normally, the not technical, uh the amateur way of doing things, you will sit down on one server, do it, two server, do it, three server, do it, so on and so on. Obviously, that is exhausting, right? And especially when it comes to making money as a company, if there is a deployment you need to make, for example, patching. You hear the term patching a lot, especially for those who are coming from the Linux session, right? Patching, I mean, just like us, people, humans. I hope everybody here is human. Human beings. When you get a cut, right, on your arm, and then you patch it, right? You cover it. I hope that's a good explanation, but I'm not done anyway. So it's basically making sure that a server or a machine um, has the latest of everything, okay? The latest application of this, and also security wise, right? Let's say, for example, because again, if you're running um, Linux, Red Hat Linux machines, right? You will obviously get the Red Hat system, right? Which means you pay a license, right? And if there's something about Red Hat systems that changed, right? Let's say there's a security vulnerability, meaning Red Hat, the company Red Hat found that, oh man, there's a bug there. We just found and we just fixed it. All right. Hey, here's a fix here. Go ahead, please apply it to your server right now so you protect it. All right. So when we say patching, right, it's time for you to make sure your server is on point. All right. It's on time when it comes to applications, when it comes to security, when it comes to, checking certain stuff. And again, it depends on the company. All right. But there are basic stuff you do. Like I say, security, obviously, application wise, that's why you usually have the command called yum update, where you update your packages, right? Or system maintain packages and stuff, and all the stuff you double check on the sudo and stuff like that. And again, all the stuff. It depends on your company. All right. Other people will also take care of something we call a certificate. Give me 1 second, please. Sorry. So certificates and so on and so on. So again, when you hear the term patching, right? That's what it implies, right? So again, this makes it even worse because I personally patch. The last time I patched was 2 days ago. No, not 2 days ago. That was Thursday. 3 days ago because that was Wednesday. And I patch constantly, all the time. Even before I went on the break, you remember, guys, I was off for like a whole week. Literally, I finished. It was a Sunday. Started patching at 12. We finished at 5. When I say 12, I mean 12 a.m. We finished at 5 a.m. And I got in my car to drive 5 hours to the port, the dock or the port at Galveston. So just to tell you, like patching is not a small, it's not something you do in 2 minutes. All right, especially for serious company. So it's a big deal. So if I tell you that I started patching, all right, and it took me 3 to 4 hours, okay, and these weren't even all the servers that we have. This was just production, okay, and I kind of wanted to explain this during Linux, but hopefully you guys know what I mean by production. Hopefully you guys understand what environments means. If you guys don't understand what I meant by production or what the term environment means, please let me know in the chat. I will gladly explain that. But anyway, so if I'm telling you that it took that long, just imagine doing it manually. Meaning, if I have 100 servers, do you really think I'm gonna sit on one, two, three? That's impossible, right? And that's where tools like Ansible come to the picture. If you notice what I just said, keyword here, I said tools like Ansible. So that alone should tell you that Ansible is not the only tool that does this. Ansible is what we call a configuration management tool. All right. Let me let me make sure I show you this because this is really important. Especially, all right, you guys can see my screen again, right? I'm on Google right now. Can you guys see my screen? Let me see here. Okay, perfect. All right, so because again, we are in the introduction of Ansible, so it's very important that I tell you about this right here. Okay, and don't worry, we're still talking about Ansible. There is this tool called Puppet. Yep, you heard that right. Comfy. Man, I can't type for nothing today. All right. All right, there's this tool called Puppet, which is a direct competitor to Ansible. It does the exact same thing, just in a different way, and Ansible is much better, which is why Ansible is more in demand, way more in demand, so much more in demand that I had an opportunity, uh, a job. I actually passed the interview, but for some reason they never. Something happened with the thing. The recruiter isn't even answering me anymore for the second round. But basically, they were, um, what's the word? Migrating, so moving their whole system from Puppet to Ansible. Okay. Again, it's called Puppet, and actually, it's still not the only one. There's another tool called Chef, like an actual chef. Okay, this is it right here. Okay, it's important for you to know this because before you learn a specific product, you need to understand what the what the product is even about. Like meaning, what are we even studying? We're studying configuration management. And in our case, we're studying Ansible. All right. So you have Puppet and Chef and Ansible. These are the top three when it comes to configuration management. Okay. Some companies use Puppet still, but Puppet is more it's outdated. It's Ansible that you want to learn. Chef, honestly, I don't even see. I've never seen a video about Chef on my YouTube feed. But so just to say, Ansible is not the only tool that does this. Ansible is just better. And the more you use Ansible, the more you see why. Well, technically, if you've never used Puppet, you never know why, right? Technically, but there's one thing specific about Ansible that makes it better, and it's something that we call agentless. Okay, so let me go back to my board there. Where is that board thing? I'm pretty sure I don't have to always stop the sharing to get to that board. I'm sure I'm doing something wrong. Let me get back to my board. How did I get to that board, man? I hate this thing. Oh, give me 1 second, guys. I can't find the board. How the hell did I get to it? Man, it was
You,
right here.
are you doing the command key and then the tab?
No,
Maybe.
no, I'm not doing any keys. I'm literally just looking for the board. It was right here. The thing is, I'm so used to Tim's. I rarely use Zoom to be okay, it's right here. I got it. I got it. To be
Okay.
honest, so okay, perfect. I found it. Okay. I used to use Zoom a lot back before, but I haven't used Zoom in okay, I think this is the right one. Oh, it removed all my servers. What a pain. Let me get back and start a new one. Let me get back and start a new one. I remove all my beautiful drawn servers. Let me use the classic. Oh, okay. Now it's back. My servers are here. Perfect. So I don't have to draw them again. All right. So sorry about that. So like I said, Ansible is a configuration management tool, and we'll get this. That's why I'm getting into, how you do the configuration part. All right. But you need to understand what does that even mean? The other, I guess, the industry as a whole. Why Ansible is specific from the company Red Hat is the one that you are needing to study. Okay, that you need to study. So you have Ansible, you have Puppet, and you have Chef. They do the same thing, but the one thing that Ansible beats them on, and it's just one of them. There are other stuff, but this is the one thing that makes it so much easier is that Ansible is agentless. By agentless, what do we mean? What we mean is you have these nine servers, right? And then out of these nine servers, you have another server, which is the 10th server, which is one of the reasons why I left this space in between. Okay. This is another server. Okay. This server is a Linux machine. All right. It's a Linux machine. All right. Cool, cool, cool Linux machine. And this is our Ansible node. Some people call it master node, but I have a problem with the term master. All right, we're going to just say the Ansible node. But I mean, it doesn't matter. We can call it the Ansible master node. All right, and what that means is simply this. Let me make it all pretty and stuff so I can redeem myself. All right, and what that means is that from this server that has Ansible installed, you can manipulate, let me just use that word for now. Sorry, you can manipulate all these servers from that one server. And the agentless part simply means that you don't need to install Ansible on these other servers. Okay? So you have one server, this big server here, that has Ansible, and that's it. This is the only server that needs Ansible installed. Now you're probably wondering, so how does it connect or manipulate the other servers? I'm getting there. All right. But understand why Ansible is better than Puppet. Or let me not say better. It might be subjective. Let's just say, or biased because I use it every day. I've been using it for multiple years. Let's just say different. All right. So, because if you get into an interview and they ask you, and they might actually ask you this, actually, it's a good question that will always, that not always, that might come to an interview. What is the difference between Ansible and Puppet, or Ansible and Chef? What is one of the big difference you remember? Is Ansible is agentless. What does that mean? Well, it simply means that you don't need to have Ansible install on the server that is going to manipulate, meaning you install Ansible on one server, and from that server, you can deploy your commands and manipulate whatever you need on other servers or the machines, really. All right. Everybody understand what agentless means? Any questions about that before I move on? Because this is where I'm getting on in the technical part. Okay. I don't see anything, so I'll take it as everybody understand. Let me see the message there. Okay, perfect. All right. So now we need to understand, how does it work? How does it how is it able to manipulate or access or control these other servers? Well, that is very simple. It's one word, SSH. Okay. So, which is another reason why I kept saying, and also Red Hat, the company Red Hat itself, is literally refusing people from getting Ansible certification without Linux, either background or Linux certification, is because if you are completely new to Ansible, and or you've never done Ansible, you will have no idea what SSH means. Okay, and since this is an Ansible session, I'm not gonna explain what SSH means because you have to meet me on the other side of the sessions. Anyway, so SSH, which I know I said I wasn't gonna explain, but obviously, it means secure shell, right? Which is just a safe way to access a server. Okay. So Ansible uses SSH. All right. So you have SSH everywhere here. Oh man, there's no way I'm gonna write SSH everywhere here. Anyway, you get the point, right? So, and the communication is it's a two-way type of communication. Meaning what? Meaning you can deploy something to this server, meaning an information, a data, not a data, but an information, yeah, a file, a configuration, whatever you want from this server, right? The master server will go from this server onto this server, onto this server, and so on and so on. But also, that's why I call it a two-way street. You can also pull information, okay? Pulling, right? Information from this server back into the server that has Ansible, which again, we call it the Ansible master node or the Ansible node. All right. So it's a two-way street. All right. It's a real conversation, which is the reason why I keep screaming, not screaming, but I keep repeating myself when it comes to networking. Okay. Well, the only networking aspect really about this is when it comes to configuration and troubleshooting. Okay. Because if you don't understand how a server communicate, if you don't know what a port is, there is no point of even us talking. Okay. If you don't understand what a port is, you're not in the right spot. All right. But of course, this is introduction to Ansible, so don't get scared. We'll talk about Ansible in an introductory manner. We won't get into crazy technical stuff. All right. So again, it's a two-way type of communication here. Okay. For a minute, I thought I wasn't recording. It was like, man, this is way too good to have missed all this. Anyway, so it's a two-way type of thing. So information are being pushed and pulled from the other um, machine. All right. So, okay. Beautiful. All right. And like I said, this is an SSH communication. All right. And like I said earlier, SSH is simply the way, or one of the ways, one of the very secure ways anyway, that you can access a server, a Linux server, right? So when you access a server, we usually don't even say just access, we say SSH. Like it's an actual verb. Like it's a, hey, can you SSH into this server? Oh no, I can't SSH into the server. Oh my God, what's wrong? Let's check the SSH groups, right? Or the port and all that stuff. All right. So once again, it's a two-way type of communication, and you use the SSH way, which is just a secure way to access a Linux machine. All right, just perfect. All right. Any questions so far? Because I'm about to get into more technical stuff. No? Okay. Looks like we're good. All right. So, what exactly is being what is this what is going on with this communication here? And don't worry about how to set up the communication yet. Again, we're just talking about introduction. You need to understand the concept, understand how it works first before we get into all the clicks and clacks. Okay, we'll get into how we do, what's the step to make the actual SSH connection. Okay, so what is this communication about? What exactly is being pushed and being pulled here? Well, whatever you want. So remember earlier, I told you the letter D here stands for database, right? So this is a database server, database server, database server. Oops, not database server because it doesn't have D. No, no, no. So just have three database servers. See, W here stands for web, right? This is a web server, web server. This is J. I think earlier I said just stands for Jenkins, right? So it's a server, it's a Jenkins server. So we have multiple servers with different types, right? Which means they have different content, right? Different purposes, different X, Y, and Z. All right. So, for example, if you use and again, this is uh, I'm trying not to explain because again, I need to remember if you're here, then you have some Linux background. So I'm trying not to explain, but if you have a database server, right, that means you install what we call a database application, right? Which simply means it's an application that allows your server to do database stuff, all right? So there are multiple applications in the world that you can use. You can use MongoDB. You can use is it Dynamo? I've been working with MongoDB for almost 5 years now, so I almost forgot about the others, honestly. MariaDB, again,
Yeah,
uh,
Maria.
yeah, MariaDB, and so on, right? So you agree with me? Obviously, you can install MongoDB and all that stuff in the web server. It's not gonna break something, but there's no point because you're not gonna use it, right? It's just wasting space. So on the web server, you have something like Apache, right? Also called HGPD, Nginx, and whatever other application that you need to install in a server for it to do its job, right? Which is, I like to explain a server in that manner because I always hear the term serve, right? That's what, again, it could be wrong, but my understanding, right? A server is simply a machine that serves, that provides a service to other machines, okay? If it's a web server, then it provides web services to machines. And for that, because a server is simply a piece of metal, junk, empty until you install applications within it. Okay. In our case, when you install a web service application like Apache, it will provide you with web serving or web services capability. All right. We can get into all the details when it comes to Linux, but that's what it is. And just that alone would tell you that the configuration files or file of this database server right here will probably be different than this web server right here, will probably be different than this JBoss server right here. And these are test servers. Here again, they're test servers, probably not probably will not be the same. So if you have that, and again, like I was saying earlier, if you have hundreds of servers, you can't just sit down and work on them one by one, right? So you would do this, the SSH stuff, and then you will do what we call, you would deploy your commands, all right? Or remember the communication I said, push and pull, you would push a command onto the server. Okay. And when we on the next section, when we get into the technical, meaning when we get into the server and we do all these things, technically you will get even a better understanding here. But there are certain concepts of Ansible that you really, really need to understand. So far, you understand what Ansible is, you understand how Ansible communicate, and yeah, you understand how Ansible communicate. So in our case, we have three servers, very low type of, very slow company. So let's say we need to, because remember, in order for these servers to be called database servers, they need to have database applications installed, right? And because you don't want to sit down on one server, two server, three server, you want to just have one command and then boom, just like that, it goes and does the installation on all 3,000 of servers in literally a couple of minutes or more, depending on if it's one command, then it shouldn't take more, honestly. Well, anyway, that's another subject. But right, just like that, and just like that, you saved yourself hours, right? And if you have to do configuration stuff, you will probably be saving yourself days, honestly, depending on what type of configuration you're doing. All right, especially when it comes to databases. I patch database servers very, very often, and they're very, very complicated stuff. Thank God we don't support, when I say we, the system administrators, we don't support a lot of the database servers, but man, there's so many stuff going on, right? And that's why Ansible is so critical, okay? Because when we talking about configuring a database server, it's not just installing MongoDB, okay? There's a lot of stuff going on there, all right? And that's why Ansible is so vital, okay? So how do you deploy this command? Do you simply get into the server and have the command and press enter? How does Ansible know how to even get to these? How does Ansible know, okay, run this command on this server? Like, okay, you just say SSH, but how does that work? Simple. There is a concept, and I'm going straight for the heart here without, you know, doing much of details, background stuff here because again, we're doing this to get into the job force and to kill it there. Okay, we're not doing this to do competition online here. So there's a lot of Ansible details that honestly we don't even need to talk much about. Because mostly when if you're studying Ansible, you're probably going to go for a automation type of job, which means you're not going to be necessarily an Ansible expert. And even when you get to be Ansible expert, and I can say this because I've had jobs where I was literally called Ansible developer. senior Ansible developer, and there's a lot of Ansible stuff that you learn when you first learn Ansible that we don't even do when we get there. Okay. So I'm just gonna prepare you for that type of work. Okay. So the concept I'm gonna talk about here is the way we deploy commands using Ansible, or I should say the main way when it comes to an actual company. Okay. At least a big, not a crazy big company. We're not talking about Google here, all right? But a company that respects itself and uses the Ansible product. Because if it's a real company, that means they're going to have licenses. It's not all companies. Some companies want to use the free version of Ansible, which basically means they are not going to be, they're not going to receive support from Red Hat, the company Red Hat, and it's fine. Okay, but even them, they use Ansible in a very dynamic manner, and I'll explain what I mean by that. For you to understand what I mean by that, actually, I need to actually tell you that there are two ways you can deploy or push commands to servers. You can use what we call the ad-hoc command. Okay. So ad-hoc. So AD, all right. AD, age, ad-hoc, and you know the word command. All right. What this means is simply you can just run one single command. So, of course, you know Linux. Let me open up my can you guys see my terminal? Because I was sharing my the whiteboard and I didn't stop sharing. But can you guys see my terminal or are you guys still seeing the whiteboard?
We still on the whiteboard.
Still on the whiteboard. Okay. Ah man, this thing is annoying.
I guess when you did share your screen, you shared one application, but not the entire screen. So that's funny.
Uh
So you were
but
able to
when
choose which one, if you could share one application or you could share the
right.
entire screen. So anytime you switch, you have the other one. You switch, you have the other one. But if you
Okay.
switch, if you share one application, then
Mhm.
you have to be switching back and forth, back and forth.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, I'll take that. I'll remember that after this. All right, so here I am in the server, a server that I was supposed to delete hours ago, actually. Anyway, so here I am in the server. It's a Linux machine, okay? And just so you don't think I'm a liar. All right, it's a Linux machine. All right, it's not a Red Hat machine. It's an Amazon Linux, but dude, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It's a Linux machine. Does the job. Um, so an ad-hoc command is where you simply run what we call Ansible commands. All right. So you see how we have Linux commands, right? You have ls to list, you have clear to clear your screen, you have pwd, you know what I'm saying, to locate yourself. You have grep to do whatever. All right. You have the touch command, all right, to create a file, right? Well, I'm not sudo. You have the sudo command, whatever it is, all right? You basically have you basically have commands, Linux commands. Now, when it comes to Ansible, you also have Ansible commands, all right? Other commands to do pretty much everything. And the reason why I literally stopped, meaning I purposely stopped remembering Ansible commands is because I don't use that at work. I don't use that at work. A real company will use the Ansible automation platform, which is the GUI. Okay. And when I say I don't use that at work, it's not to say it's not important, but when you get to using Ansible in a more dynamic manner by using what we call Ansible Playbook, okay, good word here to remember. Remember this. Playbook. This is a term you will hear every day you do Linux stuff. So you have Ansible, you have the ad-hoc commands, which are simply running an Ansible playbook. Sorry, an Ansible command, and then you have Ansible playbooks. And we'll talk about what Ansible playbooks are. That's actually way more important than learning about ad-hoc commands. All right. So an ad-hoc command will be something like this, right? Ansible dash. I'm even forgetting here. Is it dash A dash U? Honestly, The reason why I want to put more emphasis on the playbook is because, quite honestly, it's I'd rather you be a master at Ansible playbook than ad-hoc commands. Ad-hoc commands have their, it helps, right? I'm not saying it's not important, but if you want to be good at Ansible, you want to be good at Ansible playbooks. Okay. Um, for example, let me type here ad-hoc commands. You can even find cheat sheets here on the internet. Okay, so there you go. And also, one thing I should have probably mentioned from the get-go is one of the reasons why, besides being agentless, one of the reasons why Ansible is so much better and so much more loved by the community is because of documentation. And Ansible has a very strong community. I mean, very strong. Okay, most of the stuff that you use as far as commands and stuff like that were made by the community. Okay, and the more we do Ansible stuff, the more you understand what I mean. So if you want, not that you want, I'm telling you to do it actually. Uh, Go on your on Google, right? Just type Ansible documentation. Oh my God, I cannot type today. Ansible documentation. All right. Make sure you type Ansible documentation and then get in here just like that. Okay. There's a bunch of stuff here. I know it might look a little bit confusing. Take your time. Go through it. We'll go through it. I promise you, we'll definitely go through it. Because it's way too like this. There are so many stuff you don't need to know. Okay. Uh, but a lot of stuff you would need to know on a daily. Okay. When it comes to writing Ansible playbooks, understanding what Ansible inventories, meaning literally everything about Ansible is here. Every single question you have about Ansible is right here. How Ansible works. Okay. Control node. See what I was calling earlier Ansible node? This is right here. It's basically Ansible, the actual installation, plus what we call inventories. And I'm going to tell you what inventory is in a minute. Managed nodes. These managed nodes are basically those servers I showed you earlier, the database servers, the web servers. All right. So just to show you, you see, it even has the little. So, and also that's one thing, right? As engineers, we have to be very familiar and good with documentation is literally a big part of our job, right? Very, very big part of our job, actually. And the higher you go in ranks, the more documentation you happen to be doing than actual commands and stuff like that, right? So here again, creating a playbook, it will teach you everything here to the point where sometimes when you forget, you can literally come here, copy and paste, and of course, edit it the way you need it to be. All right. So very, very important stuff here. So, like I was saying earlier, we have two ways to deploy or push a command is by using uh, ad-hoc commands, which are simply, like I was saying, single line commands that you run on your terminal. Let me make sure it's pretty. Okay. Right. And again, I'm not gonna waste too much time when it comes to ad-hoc Ansible ad-hoc commands because honestly, they're useful, but it's better to talk about them when we dive into the technical part, which will be our next session. Okay. But the one thing, since we're still in explanation mode, one thing you need to know, which is the second way you can deploy or push commands onto a server, is Ansible playbooks. All right. So let me go ahead and get there. Oh man, my man showed me how to do this. You know what? Just for the sake of time, man, I'm gonna learn how to do that switching stuff you told me, man. But let me just do it like this. Okay, perfect. All right, let me get back to my board real quick. There's something called um Ansible playbook. All right. So in general, what is even a playbook? All right. So there's a reason why you see the word play in there. All right. So if you've ever done um acting or anything, that type of acting, theater type of stuff, there's a script, right? There is a playbook, meaning a set of things to do. All right. So you do this and then you do this and then you do this and then you do that. All right. Right. So that's really what even in real life, that's what a playbook is, or at least should be, right? It's a script. Just like when you write Python, if you've ever done Python, it's a script. All right. Now, the thing about this script is not just called Ansible Playbook, just to call it is a script, but what makes it special is that it's written in its own language. And by own language, I don't mean Ansible owned this or Red Hat owned this, but it's written in YAML. Okay. YAML is WML or W. I say W, YML. Sorry, YAML. Okay, YAML. So just like Python, but this is not considered a programming language. Okay, I don't know if some people consider it a program. It's not. It's not really a programming language. It's kind of like Bash. Would you consider Bash a programming language? I don't know. I don't think so. But anyway, it's just like Bash script or what else? JSON or how do you call that one we use for Terraform? Anyway, it's YAML, okay? Just like any other scripts that you have on your server, meaning this command happens first, this command happens first, and then this command happens first, and then you can add conditions. Okay, this command happened if or when, this command only happened if or when. Again, if you've done any sort of scripting, it's the same concept. Okay. When it comes to Ansible, you want to be very, and I mean very good at Playbook. This is literally the essence of this whole thing. All right. When we're done with all the technical talk as far as configuration, networking, this is a one-time type of thing, or here and there when you're trying to do some troubleshooting stuff. But this year, writing a playbook is like you can do this on a daily. All right. This is the heart of, this is what makes this thing powerful. Well, at least one part of it, or at least one of the big ways. And when you get to work, and I feel like I have to show this, you will there, and this is one of the reasons why I'm not putting too much emphasis on ad-hoc commands, and I'll show you why in a minute. Ansible automation platform. When you get to work, right? Even a small company, um, at least a small company doesn't doesn't want to waste their time, which I believe is any company that exists right now. They will not be using out commands. You're not gonna be running out of commands, all right? You will be using Ansible, but in more graphic kind of way. And this is what I mean. I don't know if you guys can see this here.
Yes, I can.
You
Go
can
on.
see it? Okay. This is actually not even the right this is the automation hub. This is not even the, and I'll explain to you what I mean by this is not Ansible, it's not the automation hub. I'm trying to find a picture here. And don't worry, we will be using this thing that I'm gonna show you in a moment. Very soon. I'm gonna teach you how to install it. I'm gonna teach you how to configure it, how to do the networking on it, how to do all that, and we're gonna be doing all that for free. Okay. So I'm not telling you because normally you have to buy a license for this. Okay. But good thing there is the free version of Ansible platform called the Ansible Tower. Okay. Or also called AWX. Okay. I make sure to pronounce that very carefully so people don't think I say AWS. AWX, like Xavier X. Okay. AWX. Okay. Also stands for uh the Ansible Tower. Okay. Now you're probably wondering what's the difference? Is it why are they giving one free and the other we have to pay. Well, the difference is you're not getting support from Red Hat, meaning when you get the license, you get all the stuff from Red Hat, the company. So if something breaks or something, or if you have questions or whatever, you can literally have a Red Hat consultant. Uh, um, in this case, uh, when it comes to Ansible, I'm actually one of them. Believe it or not, you can actually have a Red Hat Ansible consultant, not just Red, because again, Red Hat is huge. Okay, don't ever call me about because I think Red Hat has this other tool. What is that other tool called? Well, they do a bunch of virtualization stuff. I'm not there. Okay, but I actually do virtualization at work with VMware and stuff. But anyway, that's another topic. But yeah, that's the reason why you have the paid version. It will look all pretty like this. And the free version, it does the same thing, the exact same thing. And that's why and I will be able to do that, throughout this Ansible learning journey. Okay. So don't worry if you can't really see my screen like that, or if you have no idea what this even means, do not worry. We will literally set this whole thing up ourselves. Okay. And by the time we're done, you will know how to use Ansible properly. You know how to connect Ansible to servers. You will know how to set up a whole Ansible infrastructure, right? And you know how to set up users on your Ansible infrastructure. You know how to set up servers, a password to servers. We'll learn all those stuff. Okay. So just bear with me. All right. But if you miss even a single detail about how Ansible works, when we get to that point, it's going to be very confusing. Okay. This is the equivalent of, for anybody that knows the cloud, AWS, this is the equivalent of using Terraform instead of doing a bunch of, using ad-hoc commands is the equivalent of using Terraform instead of doing a bunch of clickings, right, on the AWS console. Okay. And hopefully that analogy makes sense because actually, when you use the Ansible platform too much, I shouldn't say too much, but at some point, it's almost like you will forget everything, not everything, but you will forget really even how to use other commands. That's why I try not to even waste my time there. Okay. You kind of will forget. And again, there's very low chances you get into a real company that pays your real money that you deserve and they don't use the Ansible platform. Okay. Even if they use the free version, they will still use the platform because it just makes sense. And it's so much like again, if you have a company that doesn't use the AWS platform and they want you to do a bunch of ad hoc commands, don't go ahead and stress yourself. Just tell them you're more familiar with the platform and you usually don't use ad hoc commands because that's what AAP is here for. All right. So no worries about that. I'm not skipping nothing too crazy important. Okay, so the Ansible automation platform is the platform or the GUI, right? Or the website. It's not really a website. It's not like you can just type Ansible.com. It's really a platform. It's kind of like when you go to Facebook. Okay, and maybe Facebook is still not because you can go to Facebook.com, right? But you can't just type Ansible automation platform.com. Um, it's kind of like what? It's a platform that you yourself set up on your server, right? If you remember that description that I had earlier, I was showing you how Ansible is in the middle, right? On your Ansible server, which in real Red Hat terms, we don't even say Ansible server. We call it the controller node. Okay, you need to get familiar with these terms, right? So you need to get familiar with terms like Ansible controller or automation controller, really. We also gonna get familiar with terms like the automation hub. We'll get familiar with stuff that we call API. All right. And if you already know API, then probably you're way advanced. All right. You know what you're doing. Okay. So that's the reason why I'm gonna really put emphasis on the second way to push a command on a server from Ansible, which is the Ansible playbook way instead of the ad hoc commands way. Okay. So let me get back to my stuff here. Let me get back to my stuff here. I'm trying to make sure this is not too boring. All right, so let me get back to my board here. Let's really get into playbooks, all right? And before I move, because now I'm gonna get into even deeper technical stuff. Any questions, anything that I say here that you're like, it doesn't make sense, but I kind of feel shy to ask. I don't want people to think I'm stupid or I have a dumb question. If you have, don't worry. Just ask. Because after this, I'm gonna go watch Stranger Things on Netflix, so I'm not gonna pick up my phone. Okay, no questions then. Okay. Oh, I see a question there. No, no. Cool, cool. All right, cool. Well, that's great then. Now, playbooks. Did you guys understand this, the analogy of this? Because I want to erase this. You guys get it, right? All this drawing, the way I was showing how Ansible communicates and all that. You guys understand? Okay. All right. Let me make sure because I'm a big, big visual learner, so I want to make sure that if there's any visual learner here as well, that I don't remove something that might be useful in the understanding of what I'm about to explain in a moment here. Actually, you know what? I don't even need to remove that. Let me just talk about the playbook on the side here. All right, so if you remember what I said a moment ago, a playbook is just like a script. It's just like Bash script. It's just like Python script. Okay, and even though I use Python, it's not considered a programming language. Okay, but at the end of the day, even programming, when you have a Python code, is really just a script. All right, what is a script? Even in movies, we say follow the script. What does that mean? It means we have sets of things that we need you to do at a specific moment, and you do one thing before the other and so on and so on, and so on, right? That's just a script. Follow the script. You guys probably heard that before, right? That's what a script is. Nothing, people like to make IT sound all complicated and stuff. That's all it is. Okay. And that's the whole point. That's one of the foundation of automation, right? Scripting. Okay. And what all that means, and maybe I should have talked about automation from the get-go, but I just assumed that you guys understood. But all it means is we don't want to do a bunch of manual stuff because we are lazy people, and the faster you do work, the more money you make, right? So that's why we have automation. But I mean, it's more than that. But you get the point, right? And scripting is one of the ways we do automation. Meaning, if I have a script, right, whether it's Ansible Playbook, whether it's Python, whatever it is, all right, it's gonna be a list. Okay, I like to have like let's say this is our, we are in theater, okay? This is our piece of paper with our script, all right? You do this first, and then you do this, and then you do this, and then you do this, all right? This is our script, all right? This is our script. Okay. In this case, this script is written in a different language. It's not written in English. Okay. It's not written in French. It's not written. It's written in a language that we call YAML. Okay. YAML. Okay. And before you ask, YAML is not a Red Hat or an Ansible thing. Okay. Just like Python is not I don't know. You can use Python to do so many stuff, right? You can use Python to build an application on your phone, a website, if I'm not mistaken, and so many other stuff. You use Python in AI. Python, I think, is one of the biggest, or if not the biggest, um, programming language. And I hate to have to use the word programming here. We're not doing no programming, but I just want you to understand YAML is just another language, okay? That computers understand, if that makes sense. And in this case, Ansible happens to be, YAML, uh, you know, when it comes to the playbook. All right, so here's our script is written in YAML. All right. And once you have this script written here, it can say whatever. It can say first create a user called Joe, then create a user called Mary, and then create a user called Linda, but only create a user called Linda if a user Joe doesn't exist. Okay, and put here. Okay, cool. Yeah. And Rex4 just put a more detailed definition of YAML in the chat there. Okay. But again, I don't want you to focus on YAML, okay? You're not gonna be YAML programmers here. Okay. But the
Yeah.
thing with YAML is once you know YAML, you can do so many other stuff. That's the reason why I keep repeating myself when I said knowing Linux in Ansible is just an amazing foundation.
Mm.
Okay, because after you're done with Ansible, it means you would have picked up lots of YAML. You will learn YAML, which is not even hard to learn anyway. That means you can become a DevOps engineer. And DevOps engineer, I'm pretty sure you know how much they get paid. And being a DevOps engineer, you would definitely use Kubernetes, right? If you ever heard of Kubernetes, and Kubernetes is all YAML. You use Docker, probably it's all YAML as well. Uh, you would use Ansible as well as a DevOps engineer, right? So that's why when you're done with Ansible, when you're done with Linux, you don't have to be a Linux expert or an Ansible expert. Everything you learn here, you can get whatever. Even when you get to cybersecurity, you will use Ansible for automation, most likely. Okay. So just remember that. All right. So let's get back here. So just like any script, right? It's a bunch of commands, a bunch of steps, right, on what to do. Now, there's this thing called the inventory file. Okay? Because remember, we have this Linux server here that acts as our Ansible controller, right? Or controller node or a master node, whatever you want to call it, and communicates with all these servers with a push and pull type of communication using SSH for a secure connection, right? And earlier I said, how does Ansible know about this server? Well, inside this server where you install Ansible, okay, inside that same server, you will create a file called whatever you want. You can call it host underscore list. You can call it host underscore list. You can call it inventory, but is what we call the inventory file, right? If you know the if you know the term inventory, right? If you work at a restaurant or whatever, say, okay, what's your inventory like? Oh, okay, I have two sweet potatoes there, and your inventory is basically the list of stuff that you have, right? In our case, the inventory file will have the list of servers that we are trying to manipulate or communicate with. Okay. Very, very, very important inventory files or the inventory as a whole. And the reason why I kind of stopped saying inventory files is because, like I said, when you get to work, you will most likely be using the Ansible automation platform, which means it's a bunch of clicking. All right. And unless you are the Ansible guy or you just got into a fresh company that just got into Ansible, everything will most likely be set up for you. Um, but in any case, it doesn't matter. You're gonna be a professional. But what I'm trying to say here is on the Ansible platform, there will be an area that's literally says inventory. Okay. And when you click that inventory, just like when you go on AWS or whatever, it will show all the inventories with their names. Okay. Just like in a restaurant, when you check the inventory for potatoes, right? Or you check the inventory for, I don't know, you can say spices. This inventory is called spices. All right. Inside that spices, the multiple different type of spices. But anyway, right? So it won't necessarily be a file, but you will have to know how to set up that part of the Ansible platform for the platform to be able to recognize these servers right? Because most likely these servers either going to be cloud servers or they're going to be on-prem, meaning physical servers or virtual machines, right? You just need to know how to set it up so that Ansible from the platform, okay, can communicate with those servers. And we'll get to that point, okay? But just know that in a more basic way, there's this thing called inventory file. Okay. And like I said, it's a file where you list all your servers. Okay. Inventory file. All right. And when we get into the technical, because next time we'll go ahead and install Ansible on our server and you will see all these playbooks and inventory file, for real, how they look like in the server. Okay. And here you can list all. So you see here, I have 3 database servers. I can list them all here and you can list them by their IP address or their host name. Okay. IP address or host name. And inside that inventory file, it's not necessarily, you can argue if it's the best place to put it there or not. Well, it probably isn't. But anyway, inside an inventory file, you can also mention how you want Ansible to access these servers. Okay. Even though we know Ansible can only do that using SSH, you still have to mention it, unfortunately. You will have to mention, obviously, what's the IP address or the host name. You have to mention which user you want Ansible to be when it accesses this server. You understand? So you will either have Ansible access this server as root, which means it will take on the power of a root user, or you will have Ansible access these servers as whatever you want. Okay. And again, when we get on the next session and we actually get on a real server and we do all this setup for real, you will see how that looks like. Okay. But for now, I just need you to understand these 2 files are very important, or these 2 concepts really, because when you get to the Ansible automation platform, right? They are more like features. Well, not that they're more like features. You still have to write your playbook, but there is a way to do that because now the playbook, which is again is the script, right? The Ansible script, right? It's not a programming language, it's a script that's written in YAML. It's gonna be stored in something that we call version control. Okay. And for those who don't know what a version control is, I can go into detail because we will be using version control a lot. Okay. Because I hope that some of you at some point ask themselves, okay, if we have these playbook file, which is our script, Ansible script, and the server, all right, and then we have the servers listed in another file called inventory file, and that's how Ansible is able to recognize which servers to push the playbook to, which has a sets of commands. When we get to the Ansible platform, how do we, okay, like, you know what I'm saying? I hope you guys had that little bit of confusion because that's how you kind of know that you're growing, all right? Because you kind of have to wonder, okay, so how does Ansible at that moment knows where the playbook is? Does that mean on the Ansible platform there's gonna be a part where you click and have all your playbook listed there, right? And the answer is completely no. Okay. Um, version control like GitHub, right? Very, very important thing to know. Okay. Let me share my screen. I'm sure you guys know what version control is, but just for the sake of video, let me just go with GitHub. Okay. Version control like GitHub. Huh. It actually opened my personal version GitHub account. Well, it is GitHub after all. But I kind of wanted to show you how GitHub looks like in terms of we'll get into GitHub. And actually one of the things that I forgot to tell you guys to do, do you need this? I mean, it's more like a personal thing, but as far as our session, you don't necessarily need to have a GitHub account, but I would greatly recommend for you to have so because it's really, really useful. But in our case, I'm gonna create a GitHub account where we can all have access to because that's I want to put you into the shoes of someone that's at work. Okay, at work you don't have individual accounts, right? There's one big version control. It can be GitHub or your company can use Bitbucket. Oh my God, I can't type. Bitbucket is the same thing. Okay, is the same thing. Per my experience, I've actually worked with companies that mostly use Bitbucket, but again, it's the exact same thing. They even look the same. Okay, same thing. And all this thing is gonna do as far as Ansible is concerned, that's where we will be storing all our playbook. Okay, but that's when we get to the Ansible platform steps. Okay, but that's way down the line. We'll do all the Ansible stuff on the command line first, so you can kind of get used again to Ansible and all that. But just so you understand, playbook is extremely important. That's where you will have your commands listed as a script that we call Ansible Playbook. Okay. Uh, Let me put my screen bar here. And any questions about Ansible Playbook so far? Any confusion? Because again, until we do it in a technical meaning, until we get into the server itself, you know, you won't really fully understand the technicality of it. But do you understand what that is so far? So do database administrator use Ansible for? Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. So the question here in the chat is, do database administrators use Ansible for automation? Everybody uses Ansible. That's why I'm telling you, Ansible is extremely important. Very, very important. Very important. Everybody, it's not a system administrator tool or I don't know. As long as you do deploy commands and configurations onto multiple servers and you want to do that fast, you will need Ansible, all right? Or you can use Puppet if you are not cool. But since you're cool, you're going to be using Ansible, right? So yeah, and actually, it's like it's kind of funny that you even asked that question because was it Friday? No, Wednesday. Wednesday, yeah. Wednesday, I had this thing I wanted to do. So we have a database. One of my colleagues is part of the database team, so they handle all the Mongo, all the database servers, and she was asking me to do some Linux stuff here, some certificate stuff. And before I do stuff like that, I always like to let my supervisor know what's happening. It's like, hey, are you aware that they are trying to change this, da, 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 right? Because we have to know that, right? And one thing we've always noticed, and my boss always say to me, I mean, I've noticed that too. They always trying to use us. When I say use us, meaning Linux and all the people to do the Ansible work. And my boss was always like, these people are not. They're supposed to manage their own Ansible um, playbook. They're supposed to know how to write these. We're not supposed to, you know what I mean? So sometimes she's like, if they ask you to come and write the playbook, let me know. Almost like to say, don't do it because they have to know how to do it. I remember one time I was helping another member from another app team with Ansible. I wrote the Ansible playbook. I was so happy. I went back to my boss trying to, flex like, hey man, this is what I did. Da, da, da. My boss was like, no, why did you do it? Why did you? I'm like, Dad, what do you mean? What did I do? It's like, I told you not to do it. You're supposed to let them, they're supposed to know how to do it themselves. You're just supposed to, I was like, oh, okay. So just to tell you, yes, no matter what you do, and that's why, again, I probably say this like ten times now, and I promise you it's very important. That's why starting your IT career, right, with Linux and then an automation tool is very, 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 very nice. Okay. And I say engineering career, but there's so if you want to be a Python developer, do you need to know Linux? Of course no, right? But if you're gonna be working with uh platform, right? Meaning if you're going to be doing some sort of infrastructure work, right? DevOps engineer, cloud engineer. There's this title called platform engineer. I have no idea what's the difference between a platform engineer and DevOps. This industry and titles, man. Sometimes it's like they just create titles out of nowhere. Anyway, but these are the titles that we know. If you're gonna be cybersecurity, like I was saying. So if your job has to do with infrastructure, let me just say that, right? If your job has to do with infrastructure, and obviously you're gonna be doing some sort of automation on that infrastructure, you need to know Ansible. Okay. So at work, like I say, she's a database administrator. She needs to know Ansible to the point where my boss is not allowing me to baby them too much because they need to. And they uh kind of used me at some point, and this other very good friend of mine who happens to be my colleague to the point where he specifically, I was busy, he wrote their whole, like most of their Ansible playbook, and on our Ansible platform is written by him. And so because of that, every time there's a failure on that playbook, who do you think is being called? Him. And he's not even part of their team. You see? So, and that's why at some point we really, really wanted to put the emphasis of everyone in the company, including the cloud engineers, need to know how to write Ansible playbooks. Again, difference here. They're not going to be Ansible professional. All they need to know is how to write an Ansible playbook, set it up on the Ansible platform, and run it when it's needed. And of course, the system engineers and automation team, which is me and other people, are always here if they need like uh, senior level type of touch on the playbook. All right, which is what I did the other day. I was sharing my screen, and I literally wrote. So I took a playbook, an existing playbook that I've never seen before, and in 10, 15 minutes, I added something there. I improved the playbook real quick, real fast, while I was sharing my screen. No pressure. You understand? Because he couldn't do it because technically he's not the Ansible guy. I'm considered the Ansible guy, but still, they are the one in charge of the Ansible playbooks when it comes to running them and when it comes to even creating them. But when it gets a little too advanced, that's when they call us. Okay, so that's why I say there are levels to this. All right, you don't need to be an Ansible professional. All right, you really don't. But I promise you, you stay with me for a month, good month, you'll be good. Good, you'll be good. I promise you. Stay with me for a month, you'll be good. All right. So, just a quick recap. We talked about what Ansible is. We talked about the other configuration management. We mentioned that Ansible is great because it's agentless. And there's this other part of Ansible that I mentioned earlier. That's kind of escaping my brain. We also talked about Ansible in terms of community. There you go. And I'm gonna get even deeper into the community part when we get into the technical, because if I get it deeper into it right now, it'll be a little confusing because there's something called Galaxy, right? You see, you're already confused, right? The Ansible Galaxy and collections and stuff like that. We'll get into that. All right. We talked about how Ansible communicate with servers. It has a push and pull communication. We talked about Playbook. We talked about the inventory file, like I said, which is where you list all your servers that you want Ansible to have a communication with, right? And inside that file, not it doesn't have to be exactly that right in that file, but you can put inside that file details of that communication. Okay, what type of communication is it gonna be? And it's gonna be SSH. And if you're wondering, why do you have to mention that it's SSH if Ansible normally by default will talk with these servers SSH? Well, good thing that you're wondering that if you were. Well, the answer is simple. The answer is Ansible doesn't just work with Linux. If you are working on Windows machines, it's not going to be SSH. It's going to be something called Win. WinRM, if I'm not mistaken, and you can look that up. We're not into no Windows talk here, so but it's Win something WinRM, if I'm not mistaken. If you're gonna be working with because I remember one time I wanted to do some Cisco Juniper stuff. It's gonna be I know Juniper is gonna be no Junos. Is it Junos? No, it's not Junos. What's that other thing called? There's this networking. So it's kind of like SSH. It's another way Ansible setup is secure connection with these machines. All right. So that's why you have to mention SSH because if let's say these servers here, these three servers here are not actually database servers. Let's say they are routers, so networking machines. Okay. In that inventory file, you would mention there's a part that says Ansible underscore what is it Ansible underscore is it connection? I have to confirm that. But in that inventory file, you have to mention the type of connection it has to be. That's how Ansible knows, or at least it's able to set up connections. Okay. And to brush up again, once again, about playbooks. If on this playbook right here, because one thing you need to understand, you're going to have hundreds of playbooks. And I mean, lots of playbooks, right? I mean, depending on the company, all right? So you can have one playbook running on as many servers as you need it to be, okay? And on that playbook, you can then have, not on that playbook, and then you can have another playbook running on another set of servers, all right? So if we have the need to install MongoDB on these three database servers here, right? And we don't want to just sit one, two, three. We can have a nice little playbook doing that, okay? And even though it might sound like it's one command, but if you've ever done any setup, especially when it comes to database, it's not just one command. And I know that because I was part of the people that wrote our Mongo DB setup playbook. As I promise you, it's not just one command. I can't even take credit for that. It's crazy long, man. Like it's the configuration part that really takes because the installation is nothing. It's the configuration part that takes long, right? And then you have another playbook here. Again, remember, the playbook is simply a script, right? Written in YAML. Remember that, all right? This here will probably, not probably, let's take this here for the web servers. We say, okay, on these web servers, on these servers, because first of all, until we install in the web application, they're just servers, nothing more. They're not web servers yet. But if we run one command, this command says yum install, and it's not gonna say yum install. It's gonna, and again, I'm gonna talk about. We're gonna see how a playbook looks like. Okay, the type of so if you think these are just gonna be a list of Linux commands here, you're completely wrong. Because again, remember, this is written in YAML. You will see what YAML looks like. Matter of fact, since we don't have much time left, let me show you a quick look on how a an Ansible playbook look like. Okay. All right. So perfect. Can you guys see my screen? You guys can see my screen, right? Okay. So this is how an Ansible playbook looks like. And don't worry if it looks confusing. We'll talk about it more technical uh next session because talking about like playbook itself is a whole session. You understand? A playbook in itself is a whole session, not the understanding of what a playbook is, because by now, with all the talking I've been doing, you should have the understanding of what a playbook is. Again, it's just a script like Bash script, Python, or whatever. It's just that it's written in YAML. Okay. But the application of it is what takes time. By application of it, what I mean is the structure of the script. the flow of the script, the um, the syntax of the script, because YAML has a YAML has something that we call indentation. Am I pronouncing it right? Yeah, indentation. Which is basically if you are off by one space to the left or to the right, your whole playbook is done. Okay. So next time we'll talk about that. That's why I say it's a whole um it's a whole session for it by itself. And we're gonna be doing lots and lots of projects with Playbook. We're gonna be doing crazy projects before you even get to seeing Ansible platform. The Ansible platform, that's like the final boss. You understand? Because when you get to the Ansible platform, you don't know what an inventory look like on the terminal way. You don't know what a play. You're not really good at playbooks. You're not good at understanding Ansible network, right? How does the SSH aspect works, all that stuff. The Ansible platform, that's when you graduate. That's when you are past the clickings. No, not the clickings, past the keyboard stuff. All right. That's when you become a real guy. You're the guy. You're not just a guy. You're the guy. All right. So so this is how a playbook looks like. See here, it looks very complicated, but it's not. Okay. So I'm gonna teach you what everything here means, and everything meaning what this means, why we have this. I'm gonna teach you everything here. Sorry. For example, become, see, very important. Use sudo for privileged tasks, of course. I'm gonna teach you because when you look at this, you don't see a single Linux command, don't you? Well, they're actually here. It's just not written in what's that? In Bash, right? Meaning here, for example, let me get something easy. Here, what this does, this is installing a package or an application called Apache 2, which is what see, this is what I was saying earlier. When you install an application on the server, right, it's kind of to give that server the capability of doing that work, right? In this case, Apache, like I've been saying, if you install it on the server, it will give you web service capability. All right. So this here, again, I'm just giving you a preview. All right. It's okay if you're confused. I promise you, we'll go through it very thoroughly. We'll go through it like it's gonna make complete sense. If it doesn't make sense now, do not worry. Okay. But just so you kind of understand, like, oh, okay, that's how it looks like. Okay. This year, all this year does. Look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Come on, man. This thing is literally one Linux command. Literally. It's yum install Apache 2. That's it. One command, but it took 5 lines for that. So again, when you get familiar with Ansible playbooks, this is gonna be a breeze, man. And here they added a condition. You remember earlier when I was telling you about conditions, right? And if you have Linux, because if you're here, then I'm assuming you have Linux, some sort of Linux background understanding. That means you've written Bash scripts before, any sort of scripts, Python, maybe whatever. I mean, Python's a programming language, but just like I have my Python for those who are doing Python, and I'm sorry if I'm switching into Python, if like disregard this if you have no idea what Python does or is, okay? But for those who do, you kind of understand this here. Here's a Python script that I wrote. I created a rock paper scissors game the other day, and you see I have a bunch of conditions, right? I have my if conditions, while conditions. If you're a Python person, you're probably like, why do you use so many? Why don't you just have a what is it called? Functions? Is a function like the def and then put them all in there. Anyway, so same thing here. You have a bunch of conditions. That's the same thing that happens when it comes to Ansible. Here's a condition. The condition is only do this when this thing is true. and I'm gonna teach you what this even means. Okay? Do not worry. Do not worry. I'm gonna teach you what this means. I promise you, you're not creating these. All right? You don't have to remember. You're not. This is not. This doesn't come from the sky. Okay? These when you get there, you understand. All right? Same thing here. This thing is a bit different. All this task is doing is one Linux command that we call systemd or yeah, systemd or systemctl or service, depending on the rel version, enable Apache 2. Meaning we install Apache, now we need to enable it, make it active. All right. And still we have a condition here. And here, all this thing does is using what we call debug. So when next time when we get into more playbook, I'm gonna talk about modules. You're gonna hear the term module a lot. Okay, Ansible module, and that's the reason why I really, really recommend that you guys have this here. Matter of fact, I'm gonna give you this link. I'm going to give you this link. Very, very important. This link here. I'm gonna put in the chat. If you don't understand why this link is important, don't worry. Just save it somewhere. When we get to, because next session I should be able to cover. Actually, I'm gonna make that whole session all about playbooks. Actually, yeah, all about it. So we're gonna be talking about Ansible modules. Crazy, crazy, crazy talk when it comes to Ansible module. Hours of talking about it. Okay. Um, yeah, what's my thing go? Okay, perfect. Where did my thing go? Okay. Uh, please, since I don't have that Linux background, do you think if I take the Linux class that you're offering, I'll be okay? Or you advise me to not waste my time at all taking this Ansible class? Sorry for no, don't be sorry for about the questions. I will recommend taking the Linux class. If you have no Linux background, I would recommend sticking to Linux first. Okay. Um, you won't necessarily waste your time. Today was perfect for people that don't even know what a server is. Okay. But next week, we're getting into real stuff. We're getting into SSH. We're getting into networking, which we're going to talk about ports. Oh yeah, we're going to talk about lots of networking stuff next week. Okay, we're going to talk about lots of net because again, we need to. I'm going to set up a whole Ansible infrastructure in front of you guys while you guys are following along. If you ask me what is a port, I can't help you. If you ask me what is a port on a network, I can't help you. Okay. And when it comes to writing Ansible playbooks, if I do Vim and you don't know what Vim is, I can't help you. Okay. Right. So if I come here, let me, so if I come here and I do Vim inventory, or I can say Vim host. It doesn't have to be a YAML file, but vim host ini or even .yaml doesn't matter. You don't know what vim means. If I do escape colon WQ or escape colon Q and then exclamation point, and you don't know what that means, you're gonna be lost. Okay. So yeah, if you don't know, I recommend to stick. And also remember, um, if you feel like you are losing something in terms of like, oh my God, I'm gonna lose this information. No, don't worry. Okay, it's graduation. All right. When you're done with the Linux stuff, which I highly recommend, once we get to the final. I'm talking like we're in school here. When we get to the finals with Linux, you should go and grab yourself the Red Hat System Administrator certification, which I don't even have. I would highly recommend that. It's gonna make like it's gonna bring your confidence to the roof. You understand? It's gonna make you feel very confident, very, very confident. And also it does look good on your resume and stuff, right? So, but you don't have to in terms of getting jobs and stuff, you really don't have to. Like I say, I don't have it. I don't even have Ansible certification. Okay. And I literally passed the interview with Red Hat, the company that created Ansible. So that should tell you it's not right. But I promise you, if I've had that, I would have looked better, but I could have still failed the interview if I didn't know what I was talking about. Okay. So again, next week we'll be talking about playbooks. We'll be talking heavily playbooks. Once again, please, please, I'm gonna paste it again because I know my people. All right, gonna come directly to me. Hey, okay, you send me that link. This is it that I sent the second time. Okay, have this link on your computer. Save it. Okay, I'm assuming you know how to save a link on your Google Chrome. I mean, while you're here, all right. If you don't know, all right. So again, you remember, right? The star here on your Google Chrome, right? The star here, favorite, save it, okay? So that it will show up here. See, I have it here, right here. And don't worry about what it means yet. On your free time, you can go ahead and click here and go through it if you're curious. Go ahead, do it. But again, it might be very confusing um, if you do so. But go ahead and do that. You're an engineer. You have the word ingenuity in your job title. All right. So, any questions? Is there anything about Ansible, whether you come from the Linux side or you're good with Linux and you're straight into Ansible, is there anything you're like, how does Ansible does this, or is Ansible anything at all, connection wise, business wise, even job wise, like at work, any work question? And I can stop the recording from there if you want to. If you have like very I don't know, specific or personal type of question. Let me stop the sharing first. Well, I'm gonna take the silence as a no. Either you guys are very good at Ansible or I'm just very good at explaining it. I'm gonna take the very good at explaining part. Okay, but that doesn't mean you guys aren't good. I'm just good at explaining. All right, cool, cool, cool. So, guys, like I said in the chat there, all these stuff immediately as soon as I'm done are available on my YouTube channel. Which, by the way, I'm gonna take this little bit of extra time. You would have to forgive me. I wanna show you something. So I put the link to the channel in the chat, but I just want to show you once again, make sure there's no confusion. So if you go on YouTube and type sudo masters, there's not I'm the only one that should show up there. Yep. That's how much the branding is good. You see? Boom. There you go. First, first pseudo. I don't even see any other channels. Well, I mean the videos here because you have the word master. They probably, but just to say that is not hard at all to find the channel. Okay, right here. See, this is the video that this is the talk that we had this morning about Linux. Okay, so and there's gonna be an actual playlist where I should probably these are personal channels. Uh, there's gonna be all the videos here. Right, this is the video we did today. Well, this is an old video that I did here. If you feel like watching it, go ahead and watch it. But yeah, so as soon as I stop the call here, I'm gonna be good to post the video on the YouTube channel, okay? And you can go watch there and it will be available as long as youtube.com exists. Right? It's also on my computer anyway, so no biggie. All right, guys. If you guys have no questions, I'm gonna say that this was a success and thank you guys for showing up. And yep. As far as the like exercise or projects, again, this was like talk, okay? If you want to exercise or project type of stuff, I would recommend to just watch the video because again, these were more of talking. I was just talking to a bunch of yapping, right? Explaining the thing. But next week, we're getting into serious stuff. So make sure you you come here, your head is good, You chill because we getting some serious stuff next week, man. All right, guys. So I'm gonna stop the recording and I will see you guys next week. But of course, I'm in the chat. Ask me questions and stuff all the time. Okay, let me